Hey, what is going on, guys? This is the SS Ultimate Goku back with another video. And today I'm going to be talking about the recent comments that CM Punk made about the salary in WWE and the different things that are going on with this. So CM Punk recently made a comment on a podcast or an interview that basically WWE, um, under TKO, um, that there is like you're not like as a main eventer, you are not making more money than like the lower card guys, basically. And that, with the ticket sales and incentives like that usually is what made you the most money. Obviously, you have merchandise sales as well, but that was how you got your incentives is that if the gates were sold out and you were the main eventer, you would get a percentage of that, which, the lower card guys wouldn't get those. And so Punk is basically saying that that's non-existence now, and that now it's just a base salary. And so this is a real bad thing for people that are on the lower card that, would be hungry to want to go to the main event. Basically trying to devalue the title, because the title is what makes the championship belt is what makes, you know, the stars basically. Having those titles is what makes you the champion. It makes you the main event. It establishes you as the guy, winning those titles. That's what most people will remember. And they're basically, Punk's basically saying that that's all gone now. And I agree with the sentiment of what most people are saying is that, yeah, this does hurt, some of the lower card guys. However, the lack of motivation, I don't know if there is lack of motivation still with still wanting to be the main eventer or not and wanting to win the world title, because at the same time you also got to remember, even without this structure in place, still lower card guys are not making more money than main event guys. Okay? um Luke Kaiser, um he's not making um he's not I'm sorry, Kaiser, he's not making the same amount of money as a CM Punk. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's not making the same amount of money as CM Punk. Okay. Uh El Grande Americano, Chad Gable, those guys are not making the same money as CM Punk, Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, etc. They're not making the same amount of money on their salaries. I am kind of interested into seeing how the contract, because Roman Reigns signed his contract before TKO took over. So I am wondering like how that applies, because I mean, in the contracts that Vince drew up used to have these incentives. So are people that, under these contracts, are they still not, like, did they change it? Maybe they just renegotiated the contracts and stuff like that. I don't know. But obviously there's still merchandise sales. Like, I'm almost sure, because Punk never mentioned this, is that the what's it called? The merchandise sales that are sold, you're still getting incentives for that. So every t-shirt that Punk sells, he's getting a percentage of those profits. Okay? Same with every other wrestler on the roster. So those are still incentives. Okay? Those are things that are still important. You know what I'm saying? Like, those are still important to the wrestlers. To get those incentives, basically. Um, so it's not all like lack of motivation, because you selling the most merch is going to be what makes you a main eventer. You selling the merch, obviously the fans cheering for it. But I do see the whole idea of, well, if the people that are paying for tickets are coming in, they're coming in for a specific person, but if then they're not getting those incentives for it, it doesn't matter. It just goes right to TKO, which I also hate too, because TKO, obviously, as we all know, has massively increased their prices since they took over for Vince McMahon. And obviously, that is something that a lot of people don't like. And so that's all going straight to TKO. That's not going to the wrestlers. The wrestlers are not getting a percentage of the profits for that. They're already getting paid beforehand. So again, I'm not a big fan of this. I'm not. The fact that my ticket prices, if I go to an event, or if you go to an event, it doesn't matter if, the wrestler that I paid to go see a ticket for isn't actually going to be there. You know what I'm saying? Or is going to be there, but he's not going to get he or she is not going to get that incentive. So in a way, I don't like this new structure the TKO has created. But again, the problem with Endeavor, the people that own TKO, the people that created the TKO, the problem is this is something that shouldn't have been expected, because TKO, they don't know wrestling like Vince and some of these other guys, which is why they kept a lot of these guys. There's a reason why TKO kept originally Vince McMahon along, even though once the more allegations came out, then he basically resigned because he was going to be fired. Happened. You got Bruce Pritchard, you got, obviously Triple H is head of creative right now, but you got a lot of these guys in there. A lot of people argue, well, they need to, get some new guys in there for WWE, but they really can't, because TKO doesn't know wrestling like a lot of these older guys do. Even with Paul Heyman, I'm sure Paul Heyman is involved as well with some of this stuff. They don't know. TKO doesn't know how to operate this stuff. All they're doing is just clicking change and money off of everyone, and that's why they keep gouging the prices, which is just ridiculous in itself. When they put out that statement that Vince McMahon was not gauging the best opportunities for the fans because they were marketing for family, this just shows how misguided TKO is and don't understand the wrestling business, and they don't understand how to market correctly for the wrestling business. All right. Vince McMahon, for whatever you want to, believe in Vince McMahon now, and or as someone who was in creative, because obviously the last 15 years his creative sucked. But the one thing Vince McMahon had right was marketing to his fans. He understood you had to market to parents that had kids, okay? He understood that, because that brings in people that become fans and hooked on it, and then they might want to pursue it, okay? The guys that are coming in and they don't have real passion for this business, it's not going to be good. Bringing in some of the, not all of them, but like bringing in guys from other sports, I don't think is ideal, unless of course they're like Braun Breaker, who has family roots to the business, or, obviously Roman's family, Rock's family, they had ties to the family business of wrestling. But, when I see a lot of these, athletes, not all of them, because there are some that did really good. Kurt Angle obviously did very good. And he was not in the WWE wrestling business, but obviously he was a great regular wrestler for freestyle and school wrestling. But outside of those guys, outside of those things and those families, you know, you gotta want someone who is passionate for the business and understands the business and wants to be in there. Someone like CM Punk. CM Punk obviously didn't have any of those roots that I just talked about. He was someone who, was just wanted to be he wanted to be a professional wrestler, because he was passionate about what he saw on TV. You're ruining those opportunities when, TKO is marketing for celebrities specifically. Not that Vince didn't market for celebrities. He did, but you see TKO is doing it to an extreme level, where it kind of gets redundant, It kind of gets redundant. And not to mention, we talk about, it's time to create new stars, new main eventers, but yet, what has TKO really done since taking over in terms of creating new stars? Yes, I know some people are going to bring up, well, look at what they're doing with Braun Breaker, and that is true, but do you see Braun Breaker going for the title anytime soon? I know we've talked about it. I know he might still possibly be taking on Punk at WrestleMania, but now I'm hearing rumors that they want to do Punk Roman, which, is really weird in itself. And I've also heard that there's a possibility that they're going to try to do Brock versus Braun, and there might be a double cross at Survivor Series in the War Games match. And you look at that, and I'm like, where does that elevate Braun? All right, unless he beats Brock. But again, that's not going to elevate him to getting the title. And again, as we talked about at the beginning of this video, does the title, is it important to the wrestlers now? Like at least the newer wrestlers, is it important if they're getting the same amount of money? If you're getting the same amount of money as another wrestler and you're not responsible for the ticket sales, which is why you don't get incentives for it anymore, then is it the passion for the championship? When you see all these type of guys, we still are waiting on LA Knight, people are still into LA Knight, and yet he's not the main eventer. We've made multiple videos on LA Knight now, and what they're fucking doing with him. We're looking at them forcing on the main events for night 1 and night 2 on the established guys, which, not to say that Vince didn't do that either, but for Triple H, the guy that people think, is going to make new guys, he really hasn't done that much. I mean, I think Triple H is focusing too much more on the women wrestlers, trying to make new stars out of them, even though they're not nowhere near the main event level. We've seen him do experiment tests with, the women wrestlers on whether they belong in the main slot for the women's division. I don't see it with Stephanie. Like, Stephanie was on the main roster for like 2 months and all of a sudden is now the champion, and I don't see it. I don't see like why she's like the champion this quick. Okay? Like, and I don't get it. I don't get it. Jade Cargill, she had to turn heel for them to give her the title. And obviously there was a lot of botches along the way. Obviously the King of the Ring thing didn't help things for Jade, but I don't see what we're doing with her. Where are we going with Jade? Um she's just like a strong wrestler that's the champion. You know, Tiffany Stratton's out for a while. But again, Tiffany Stratton, had a major streak of winning, right? She had been the champion for a long time after cashing in on the Money in the Bank, but yet she loses to Stephanie, who had only had the title for 2 months, or only had a title just for a few weeks prior to taking on Tiffany Stratton. And somehow you're going to say that she's a better champion than Tiffany Stratton, the person you built months as an undefeated wrestler, for months, throughout her entire title run up to that point. When she lost to Stephanie, she had been champion. She had been champion and she hadn't lost. And then you had her lose to someone who just had won the title a couple weeks prior. That makes next no sense. And that's what I'm saying. Like, it seems like he's trying to create more stars in the women's division by giving them championships than he's doing with the men. The only person you could think of is really Priest, who is in the mid cards and probably will be in the mid card for the rest of his career, because I don't think he ever wins the world title again. I really don't. His title reign was a failure. Okay. But outside of him, who has Triple H put the WWE or the new World Heavyweight Championship on? That's I guess Jey Uso. But what? Jey Uso had the title less than Jey Uso had the title less time than the Priest did. Okay, he had the title less than him, and he got a tap-out victory against Gunther at WrestleMania. Okay, those are the only two people, and both their reigns failed. Priest had it way longer than he should have, and freaking Jay had it only for 2 months, and then that was it. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are failures, okay? What new star has won that world title? Okay. Cody Rhodes was on the rise, obviously, when he finally won it. Okay. And that was before Triple H took over on creative. Yeah, he won the title under Triple H, but he was already being established well before Triple H took over. Okay. Vince McMahon was the one who re-signed him. People forget this. Triple H had nothing to do with Cody Rhodes being brought back. That was all Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon brought back Cody Rhodes. He made him the secret opponent for Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. Okay? That was all Vince McMahon. All right? Vince McMahon's the one that had him win those matches against Seth. All right, including the classic Hell in a Cell that everyone remembers now, where he wrestled injured. And I don't know exactly where Vince would have gone with Cody had he not been injured during those time periods, or what he would have done after Cody came back. Because by the time he came back, Triple H started doing the creative process because Vince took a leave, even though he still owned the company at that point. He was secretly consulting Triple H, though, behind the scenes, as we all know, as we've later found out, which doesn't surprise me. But again, it shows that, Vince was planning to do something with Cody. Okay? Now, I don't know if 39 he would have won, because it seemed, from what we've heard, it ended up being Vince that decided that Cody would lose at 39 to Roman. But I do think it would have eventually led still to the same thing of Cody winning. Because obviously he, the money he signed for Cody, he invested in Cody. That was Vince McMahon's last investment, okay, major investment before he sold the company to TKO. Okay? That was his last major investment, was signing Cody to a big-time contract and bringing him back. He even had him come back with his own music, that he had in AEW. All right? Which is something that he normally doesn't allow. Okay? So Vince McMahon saw something in Cody, just like he saw in Drew McIntyre. He originally had Drew as a future world champion, but then Drew failed and was released. And then he reinvigorated himself, and Vince was impressed by that, and he came back to the company. And he gave Drew a push, okay, to the world title, okay, or the WWE title, okay. Point being is Vince liked guys that hit rock bottom and failed with him, but then goes on the indies or wherever and turns into, a success and then brings them back. This is probably something you're not going to see under Triple H. Okay? Okay, Vince wanted to see guys that he liked, that failed, reinvigorate themselves elsewhere and come back. He liked that. Vince liked that. All right, that was the one thing you could say about Vince, is he did like that. Even though he couldn't do it himself, okay, he did like if, they could figure it out on their own, and get them where he needed to get them, okay? And that was what he was going to do with Cody had, he not left at that time, because that's why he signed him. That's why he put an investment, he got a big time salary under Vince when Vince signed him. All right. He got main event type money. Okay. So yes, Cody would have eventually won the title under Vince McMahon. Okay. It's just a matter of when he would have won it, which may have been too late, knowing how Vince delayed everything. But the point being is still the same. The motivation is definitely going to be lacking going forward under TKO. And especially it will be lacking if TKO decides to sell it to someone else, whether it be to the Saudis or another company. Maybe back to Vince under the Saudis, which, Vince getting backings from the Saudis, which is one theory that I have thought of as well, that they might do. But point being is, this is very, very damning for the future of the WWE. Because there needs to be incentives. There needs to be a motivation for these guys to want to not only be in the business, but want to get that motivation to be the main eventer. You've seen it with Vince, with, if they hit rock bottom, they go elsewhere and they figure it out and then they come back, or, other things that happen, but you're not going to get that motivation if they're not there. If they're not, getting the full picture of what they need to get for these stars. So that's what I say from this whole CM Punk money incentive thing. It's a very unfortunate situation. Let me know what you guys think, and let me know what your opinion on this is. Comment, rate, if you like this video, my videos, please subscribe. Hit the notification bell for the latest content. Thank you. And that is about it, guys. I am the SS Ultimate Goku, and I'm out of here. Peace. Also, make sure, besides my YouTube channel, to follow me on the Twitch, the Instagram, and I do have a Discord link in the description where we discuss various topics, including this one here. And now I'm out. Peace.